we are living some strange days. Very strange indeed, for there are times when I don't know which is worse, the event that we are participating in or the trip trying to get to it. Greetings and welcome to Checkpoint Gaming Gaslands. For this episode, we will cover and consolidate the rules of the Savage Highways campaign of Gaslands. With Savage Highways, it is a campaign type that is available to be played beyond what is addressed in the Ways to Play episode. The difference with this given campaign is that it consists of 3 narratively linked scenarios. With this campaign, it can be played as a standalone experience or it can act as a bridge between 2 televised events. With how it is set up, Savage Highways is meant to be played with a minimum of 2 players, but more are allowed to join. With the participating players, one will represent the rigger while the rest will represent the gangers. With the rigger, said player will represent a sponsored team that participates in the scenarios discussed in Ways to Play and is traveling between 2 events. With the gangers, said player or players represent bandits and highwaymen that are roaming the wastelands looking for an easy payday. With the play area, go with the dimensions of 4 feet by 4 feet. From there, lay out some terrain so that it represents a post-apocalyptic wasteland. When starting the campaign, always start with Scenario 1. With the building of the teams, the rigger will receive a war rig and 20 cans in order for them to buy weapons and upgrades. With that said, the war rig is not allowed to purchase any perks, nitro booster, or any electrical upgrades. Once finished building the war rig, the rigger will have 60 additional cans available as dedicated to purchasing the rest of their team plus any additional weapons and upgrades for those given vehicles. With that said, a second war rig is not allowed to be purchased. As for the gangers, they receive a total of 120 cans that is to be equally split among the ganger players to build their given teams. Each ganger player is free to select a sponsor independently of all other players. It is important to note that the ganger player is not allowed to purchase a war rig. And if they are playing with multiple ganger players, then the team games rules are to be implemented. During the course of the campaign, it is possible for the war rig to gain and lose 5 possible war rig upgrades available in this campaign, with the war rig having any number of these upgrades at any given time. For these campaign-specific upgrades, they do not require any build slots and the war rig is not allowed to have more than 1 of each named upgrade at any given time. In addition to this, only 1 upgrade is allowed to be removed during any activation by any means. With these dedicated upgrades, they consist of the following: Cowcatcher, Fuel Pod, Grease Monkey, Hangers On, and Salvagio. With Cowcatcher, the vehicle may consider a single piece of terrain to be destructible during its activation, which can only be used once per round. If this vehicle is involved in a head-on collision with a ganger vehicle, then discard this upgrade. With Fuel Pod, it allows the vehicle to discard or reroll 1 skid dice per gear phase. If a ganger vehicle declares a tailgate smash attack and rolls no attack dice, then this upgrade will have to be discarded. With the Grease Monkey, if the vehicle is able to successfully evade all hits during an attack, then it will regain 1 hull point that it previously lost, though this can only be done once per gear phase. With Hangers On, it increases the crew value by 4. But if this vehicle is involved in 2 or more collisions during a single activation, then discard this upgrade. With Salvagio, the vehicle is allowed to remove 1 hull point in order to discard all of its hazards, but this can only occur once per round. If the vehicle is the target of 2 shooting attacks in a single gear phase that does not suffer cover in a single gear phase, then discard this upgrade. In addition to what has already been addressed, there are some special rules that apply throughout the campaign. First, we have plot immunity. With this rule, it causes the war rig to be unaffected by the death ray weapon. Second, we have Ride Eternal. With this rule, after each scenario is played, any vehicle that is wrecked are regained prior to the start of the next scenario. With these resurrected vehicles, their hull value will be permanently reduced by 2. Third, we have Unlikely Stamina. With this rule, if a war rig has any of the war rig upgrades that were just discussed, it cannot be wrecked. This is true even if the war rig has lost all of its hull points. But when the war rig has lost all of its hull points and do not possess any of the war rig upgrades, then it will immediately wreck. Finally, we have Respawn. With this rule, it is similar to Respawn found in the other scenarios, but instead of respawning from a spawn point or gate, the vehicle will have to respawn in contact with their designated play area edge. In all scenarios of this campaign, the gangers will decide which of them will start the scenario in pole position. At the end of each gear phase, pole position will swap between the gangers and the rigger. With Scenario 1, Escape the City, it has 2 end conditions. The first is if the war rig touches the ganger's play area edge. If it does, then it escapes and the rigger player will win. The second is if the war rig is wrecked or gets disqualified. If it does, then the gangers will win. At the start of the scenario, the rigger will select one of the war rig upgrades and attach it to their war rig. From there, the rigger will deploy their war rig touching one of the play area edges. The rigger will then deploy the remainder of their vehicle touching the same play area edge. After the rigger has deployed their vehicles, it is time for the gangers to deploy theirs. With their deployment, it is on the play area edge opposite of the rigger play area edge. With the deployment of their vehicles, do so in any order that the gangers have agreed upon. With each ganger, they deploy their first vehicle touching any point on their play area edge. With the deployment of the remaining vehicles, have them located within medium range of this first vehicle. After the gangers have deployed all of their vehicles, they have the option of deploying two pieces of scenery that is no longer than medium in length and no wider than short anywhere outside of long range from the war rig. Depending upon who wins this scenario, it will determine which scenario is going to be played next. If the gangers win, the campaign will move on to scenario 2A. In addition to this, the war rig will permanently lose its upgrade and it cannot select that upgrade again. If the rigger wins, then this campaign will move on to scenario 2B. In addition to this, the war rig will keep its upgrade for the remainder of the campaign. With scenario 2A, Rescue, there are two end conditions. The first is if the war rig touches the rigger play area edge. If it does, then the rigger will win. But if the war rig is wrecked or is disqualified, then the gangers will win. If the gangers win, the war rig will permanently lose its upgrade and it cannot select that upgrade again. If the rigger wins, the war rig will keep the upgrade for the remainder of the campaign. But regardless of who wins this scenario, move on to scenario 3. At the start of scenario 2A, the gangers will select one of the war rig upgrades that has not been previously selected and attach it to the rigger's war rig. From there, the rigger will deploy their war rig in the center of any play area edge, followed by deploying the remainder of their vehicles touching the opposite play area edge. This will represent the rigger's play area edge. After the rigger has deployed their vehicles, it is time for the gangers to deploy theirs. With their deployments, it is on the play area edge that does not possess any rigger vehicles on it. With the deployment of their vehicles, do so in any order that the gangers have agreed upon. With each ganger, they deploy their first vehicle touching any point on their play area edge. With the deployment of the remaining vehicles, have them located within medium range of this first vehicle. After play begins and the gangers reach the end of their first turn, the gangers are allowed to pivot the war rig up to 90 degrees in either direction. If there are any terrain pieces, obstacles, or other such items present and come into contact with the rotating rig, then a collision window will occur. The reason behind this is because the driver of the war rig will lose their bearings in a random sandstorm. With scenario 2B, Ambush, there are two end conditions. The first is if the war rig touches either ganger's play area edge. If it does, the war rig escapes and the rigger will win. The second is if the war rig is wrecked or is disqualified. If it does, then the gangers will win. If the gangers win, the war rig will permanently lose its upgrade and it cannot select the upgrade again. If the rigger wins, the war rig will keep the upgrade for the remainder of the campaign. But regardless of who wins this scenario, move on to scenario 3. At the start of scenario 2B, the rigger will select one of the war rig upgrades that has not been previously selected and attach it to the war rig. From there, the rigger will deploy their war rig in the center of the play area facing any play area edge. With this play area edge, it will become the rigger's table edge. From there, they deploy the remaining rigger vehicles touching the opposite play area edge. After the rigger has deployed their vehicles, it is time for the gangers to deploy theirs. With their deployment, the first vehicle is to be placed on either of the two play area edges that are perpendicular to the rigger's table edge. This will become the ganger's play area edge. From there, place the remaining vehicles touching the same play area edge within medium range of the first vehicle. With the deployment of their vehicles, do so in any order that the gangers have agreed upon. In addition to this, swamps are found on the play area. With these swamps, the rigger may place up to 3 of them anywhere on the play area. With these swamps, they are treacherous terrain and are no more than medium range diameter. With the setup for this scenario, the war rig will begin as a wreck and it cannot be removed from play. If a vehicle controlled by the rigger moves within short range of the war rig, then the war rig will respawn in place and will activate as normal from that point onward. With Scenario 3, Long Road Home, there are two end conditions. First, if the war rig scores 3 victory points, the rigger will win and the scenario will come to an end. Second, if the war rig is wrecked or disqualified, then the gangers will win and the scenario will come to an end. With the winner of this scenario, they are declared the winner of this campaign. At the start of the scenario, players may choose to place a long, straight road surface down in the middle of the play area. With that decided, the rigger will attach the remaining 3 upgrades that were not previously used in addition to the upgrades that remain attached due to the rigger winning one or both of the previous scenarios to the war rig. From there, the rigger will deploy their war rig in the center of any play area edge. This will represent the entry edge as well as the rigger's play area point, with the opposite play area edge becoming the exit point. From there, deploy the remaining rigger vehicles within medium range of the war rig. After the rigger has deployed their vehicles, it is time for the gangers to deploy theirs. With their deployment, they deploy their first vehicle touching any point found on the entry edge. With the deployment of the remaining vehicles, have them located within medium range of this first vehicle. However, no ganger may deploy their vehicle within double range of the war rig. With the deployment of their vehicles, do so in any order that the gangers have agreed upon. If the war rig touches the exit edge, the rigger will gain 1 victory point. From there, remove the war rig from the play area. With every vehicle that exits the play area in the same gear phase as the war rig, mark it as 1. With all vehicles that exit the play area in the next gear phase, mark it as 2. Repeat this process until you mark the exiting vehicles as 6. All vehicles that are still in play after marking vehicles as 6 will become disqualified from the scenario. Once the play area has been cleared of the vehicles, take turns rearranging the terrain found in the play area while leaving the marker points in place. For this terrain rearrangement, no terrain is allowed to be placed within long range from the entry edge. Once this rearrangement has been completed, this counts as a new play area and the second round can begin. In this new round, deploy all the vehicles that are marked as 1 with the gear phase set to 1. When the round moves onto gear phase 2, deploy all of the vehicles that are marked as 2. Repeat this process until all marked vehicles have been deployed. When it comes to that of deploying the vehicles, place them on the entry edge exactly opposite from its exit point as represented by the respective marker point. With the deployment of these vehicles, they remain in the same gear that they exited the play area in. They also retain all of the hazards and damage that they obtained in the previous round. This race from entry edge to exit edge will repeat until a victor has been determined. When using audience votes to respawn, the respawning vehicle does so upon the entry edge. With the gangers, they may respawn the vehicles even if they have other vehicles found in play. With the cost of the ganger respawning, it is based upon the victory points acquired by the rigger. If the rigger has 0 victory points, then it costs the gangers 1 audience vote to respawn. If the rigger has 1 victory point, then it will cost the gangers 2 audience votes to respawn. If the rigger has 2 victory points, then the gangers are not allowed to respawn. Since this is the final scenario of this campaign, then it means that the war rig is in a desperate flight. Because of this fact, the rigger is not allowed to use their war rig's tanker anchor special rule during this scenario. This is because the rigger can see the finish line and wants to get there as quickly as possible. Completing this scenario will also save the war rig from any further assaults from the gangers. So with that said, that is what you need to know when it comes to that of Savage Highways. If you like this episode, feel free to give it a like, and if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes that we upload, then go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode, and happy gaming.